Welcome to the Wyoming Women's Business Center's 2021 webinar series. Today's presentation is 7 options to access money for small business. I'm Christine Langley with the Wyoming Women's Business Center, and I'm going to be your speaker today. I'm also joined today by Steve Emmel with SBA out of Casper. So welcome, Steve.
Oh, thank you so much, Christine.
So I've invited Steve to tag on at the end of our presentation today to talk a little bit more about specific options available to Wyoming businesses that are offered by the SBA through banks or through the banking system here in Wyoming. So before we jump into our content, you're going to notice, everybody, the GoToWebinar control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. I just want to call attention to the questions panel. If you have any comments or questions during the webinar today, I'd like you to use those to communicate with me. Also, all participants are muted to minimize background noise. So once again, of course, if you have any questions, type those in and we'll take care of those towards the end. Immediately following this presentation, I'm going to launch a survey, and I ask that you just stay on the line for another 60 to 90 seconds and complete that survey. We really do read every single survey. It provides us with valuable information to help us grow our program and communicate our experiences with our funding partners. All right, so let's dive in here a little bit more to know the agenda today, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the Wyoming Women's Business Center, and then we'll dive into our format. So this is a 30-minute format. We appreciate everybody joining us today on what might be your lunch hour. This is being recorded, and so if you want to review any of the content, it'll be available on our YouTube channel, and anyone that registered for this webinar is going to get a link to the recording. So you can always just go to youtube.com, search for the Wyoming Women's Business Center. I encourage you to subscribe to our channel. You can check out all the other business education content that we've provided over the last several years. We have a lot of rich content in there, and it's all designated in specific categories. So the WWBC is a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to enable and empower Wyoming entrepreneurs. Of course, we have a special emphasis on women. That's why we're the Women's Business Center, and women specifically that are economically and socially disadvantaged. And in Wyoming, we know that if you are a woman, you're socially disadvantaged. So that's certainly our demographic. We do that through 4 distinct programs. So the first is our business counseling and training program, and that's always free. The second is our microfinance programs, and we offer both microloans as well as individual development accounts. Those are like matched savings accounts. The third is an artist development center, and we run that in conjunction with our Works of Wyoming store that's in downtown Laramie. And then lastly, we launched our COVID-19 support program last June, and we got some big news this morning that we're going to be able to continue that program for an additional year. So we look forward to continuing our support program for those businesses that were impacted by COVID-19. All right, everybody, let's jump into some of this content on access to money, or what a lot of people in the business world call access to funding. And access to funding is really just a term that's used in economic development circles. And it's simply because it's a business term, but the truth is it just means finding money. Okay, finding money for your business idea or your business expansion. And it's probably the #1 question that everyone that works in economic development gets, right? So any business counselor, any banker, any service provider that works with entrepreneurs gets asked this initial question. How do I get money for my business? And what I find is that often the truthful answer is not what most people want to hear. So much so that sometimes I find a business owner gets referred to a lot of different organizations within their community in search of money or the answer to that question, because nobody wants to give you sort of the honest answer or the truth about funding. But, at the Women's Business Center, we're not here to sugarcoat things or sugarcoat the truth. I'm here to educate business owners on the reality of money and funding for your business. Because if you go into your business understanding the reality and what your true and real options are, then I think it's a much faster path to success. And it's going to be a lot less frustrating. So Before I dive into the various options, I want to bust the number one myth I hear over and over again. And that myth is, I'm a woman-owned business, or I'm a minority-owned business, or my business is really going to help my local community. So isn't there a grant that I can apply for that is going to give me all the money that I need to start my business? Sounds something like that, right? People are convinced that there are government dollars, grant dollars, foundation dollars that will fund their startup of anything from a daycare center to a bakery. And so while there may be some small grants that are available, and when I say small, I mean less than $2,500, okay, to pay for specific products or items that are related to your business. There really is no government grant available to fund 100% of the startup costs for you for your for-profit business. Again, at the Women's Business Center, we work with for-profit businesses, not nonprofit. Nonprofit is a totally different animal. But for for-profit business, those grant dollars, those types of grant dollars, they don't exist, okay? Grant dollars are a great way to help you with certain facets of your business if they are available in small amounts, and they can be helpful if you can meet the stringent requirements. But grant dollars are not a pathway for for-profit businesses to establish themselves or to grow. Okay, so now that we've busted that myth, let's talk about what your real options are for accessing money to start and grow your business, because there's still a lot of them out there and it's still absolutely possible. So first up, and what I think is typically, especially in Wyoming, the most viable possibility for the vast majority of small business owners is what we call bootstrapping. Okay, what does that mean? It means that essentially you're using your own money. You're using money from your savings account to fund your business, or maybe you're able to save some money from your day job, set it aside to start your business. If you can meet the requirements of an IDA program, an individual development account, that matched savings program that I talked about, you may be able to access some small grant dollars, again, probably less than $2,000. But the vast majority of your funding is going to come from your own resources. And so sometimes entrepreneurs can borrow from their 401k. And of course, I never recommend that people quit their day job until they have a clear path to profitability in their business that can pay them an actual income. So if this bootstrapping concept sounds hard to you, it's because it is, right? Business ownership can have really big rewards. And because of that, the barrier to entry can be steep. And if it were easy, everybody would be doing it. And starting any business takes an enormous amount of effort and commitment, but most importantly, it's going to require some risk. And so you have to ask yourself, what is your risk tolerance? And your risk tolerance often comes down to how much money you're able to risk or willing to risk. And I always remind my clients, if you aren't willing to invest your own money in your business, then why would anybody else? And so in the business world, we call that having skin in the game. And often any investor, whether it be a bank or a private investor, is looking for the owner or the entrepreneur to have skin in the game. Okay, next up is utilizing credit cards. Could be similar to bootstrapping. They're your credit cards. It's based on your credit, but this isn't from your savings, right? It's basically a loan that you're taking from a personal credit card. Now, I'll tell you, full disclosure, my husband and I started our first business back in November of 2000, over 20 years ago, by using a Citibank MasterCard. We purchased $7,000 worth of equipment to get started. I kept my day job to cover our minimum expenses. And it was super scary and incredibly risky. We had 2 young children at the time, but so is business ownership, and the rewards can be big. So remember that credit cards give you a 30-day float where you don't pay interest at all. And so in some cases, you might be able to make enough money within that 30-day float to pay off that credit card debt. Otherwise, you're going to want to be smart about your credit cards, and you want to look for low interest credit cards, or you can utilize balance transfer cards to keep the interest rate down. Do yourself a favor and be sure you read the fine print and understand the credit card rules. And if you need help, that's what we're here for. Reach out to the Women's Business Center. We can certainly walk you through that process and share some resources with you to find what the current best credit card deals are. All right, guys, we've talked about the first two options, which are basically your own resources. So now let's move on to the next most viable option, and that's friends and family. Now, often when I ask clients if they have friends or family that could invest, I'm immediately told that that's not an option. And sometimes that's true, right? Sometimes our friends and family just that we are close to, they just have no extra resources to help. But often it comes down to entrepreneurial pride and not wanting to ask because either you fear rejection or you really want to be seen by friends and family as doing it on your own. This is that rugged individualism that a lot of entrepreneurs have, and especially is our climate, I think, here in Wyoming. And so I'm here to tell you from experience that being a business owner requires you to get your ego in check, because you're going to get a lot of no's in your business. And the best place to identify money for your business idea is with the people that know and care about you the most and believe in you the most. So I always recommend that beyond your own resources, you always start with friends and family before you go seek funding from the other options we're going to talk about today. But I also recommend that you prepare your ask just like you would if you were going to a bank or a private investor. And that means having a really well-developed business plan along with financial projections. Now, when I say that to most of my clients, this is also typically the part where they tell me that they really don't have time to write a business plan, or they don't know how to do financial projections, or they don't have a computer, or they don't know how to use an Excel spreadsheet program, right? All of those things might be true, and they may be completely legitimate, but it doesn't make the need for a business plan or financial projections any less real. So if you need help putting together a real business plan, and what I mean by a real plan is that it actually explains how you're going to legitimately pull this off and be successful, step by step. What are you doing in the first 90 days to make money, right? That's different than an academic business plan or academic assignment. So if you're at that stage, then you're ready to reach out to somebody at the Women's Business Center and we can step you through that process. We even have a facilitated or a self-guided online program that includes a business plan builder. So you simply answer the questions. I say simply, but it takes some work to answer the questions. You answer the questions and then at the end of it, you hit a button and it formats it into a beautiful business plan. It's a process, it takes work, it takes research, but you need it in order to go out and raise money. And we can counsel you through developing your financial projections as well. All right, so finally, if you're able to secure some money or funding from friends and family, it's important that you have the transaction documented using a promissory note and a payment schedule so that everything's in writing. There's lots of templates online that you can find to help you draft a professional agreement. And depending on the dollar amount, it might be worthwhile to consult with an attorney. Just because it's family or close friends doesn't mean they don't want their money back, right? And there's a difference between a gift and a loan. And it's important that everybody understands the terms up front and what we're dealing with. All right, number 4. Option is crowdfunding. Now, this is a really interesting tool for raising capital. Modern day crowdfunding started in 1997 when a rock band sent out an email to about 1,000-person email list, just notifying them that if they went out on tour, they figured out they were going to lose about $60,000. And so these fans responded by saying they should raise the money. And so via emails, they were able to raise enough money to get this band to go out on tour. And that was in 1997. So fast forward a decade, in 2007, Indiegogo was launched. And that was followed in 2009 by Kickstarter. And really the rest is history. So there's three types of crowdfunding. The one most familiar to the general population is what we call donation-based crowdfunding, right? GoFundMe pages. It's just a straight donation. And that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense for small businesses, especially for-profit small businesses. So that leads us to the one that is more viable for raising money for a small business, and that's a reward-based crowdfunding. And then third is peer-to-peer lending. So if you'd like information on reward-based crowdfunding, you can go to our YouTube channel and you'll find a few webinars that we've hosted over the last 6 months specifically on crowdfunding. We even have a reward-based crowdfunding partnership with a company called The Local Crowd, which is in Laramie, Wyoming. And you can launch a campaign for free through the Women's Business Center on their platform. So reach out to us if that's something that interests you, and certainly go to the YouTube channel if you want a deeper dive into understanding crowdfunding. And then the last type of crowdfunding is the peer-to-peer lending. This is really similar to getting money from friends and family, but in this case, you don't know the person, right? So this is simply a negotiated loan between two people, and it can be an option for funding. But again, the requirement is going to be that you have a solid business plan, and financial projections are going to be important because these people expect to get their money back. All right, guys, next up is angel investors. So let's start out by defining what is an angel investor. Angel investors are high net worth individuals, and that typically means that they have a net worth of over $1 million in highly liquid assets. So they have over $1 million in like cash or cash equivalents. They don't have $1 million sitting in the primary home that they live in, right? That would be different. And most angel investors have well over $1 million, but that's kind of the bare minimum. So a lot of angel investors are looking to invest, but they're looking to invest smaller dollar amounts, so under $1 million. And they primarily invest in businesses that are local or regional. And they enjoy sharing their knowledge, being involved with the business, maybe in a mentoring role. And they're typically looking for an equity share position, right? They want to take an ownership percentage in your business. But in some cases, they're also willing to structure a loan. And so that's what an angel investor is. For the vast majority of our clients at the Women's Business Center, which we consider micro enterprises, these are our businesses that usually take less than $35,000 to start. They have less than 5 employees and probably always will have less than 5 employees. Most of them are sole proprietorships or kind of one-man shows. These are not the types of businesses that angel investors look to supply money for, right? Angel investors are looking for a return on their investment. And so the business needs to be profitable or on a solid path to substantial profitability to where they would get a return. All right, venture capital. So venture capital is kind of in that same bucket with angels, but you can just add a bunch more zeros, okay? These are people or funds that are looking for larger investments, and they're a lot more comfortable with risk because they're looking for major returns and a major equity position. Again, micro enterprises don't typically qualify as a prospect for venture capital money. And the truth about VC money is that less than 1% of all businesses that apply for VC money annually actually get funded. And over 80% of that VC money and those companies that get funded are located in the Bay Area of California, specifically Palo Alto. Okay, so the vast majority of VC money is housed kind of in one place right now. over the last decade, there's lots of groups that have been trying to diversify that out and get it out into other areas across the US, but they're usually in major metropolitan areas. They're really fun to read about, though, in Inc. magazine when they make big deals. But for most Wyoming businesses, it's not a viable option. Okay, so I'm gonna end today on bank loans, and this is probably where we have the most information. There's lots of options when it comes to bank loans, but just like all my other examples, besides bootstrapping and credit cards, they're all going to require a strong business plan and financial projections. So please start with those documents before approaching any lenders, because they're just going to turn you back if you don't have your ducks in a row in that respect. So most of us have a bank that we use in our personal life, and that can certainly be a place to start. But I want you to remember that not all banks are billed equally, right? So just because your business or your business plan isn't bankable, or the bank denies you at one branch, let's say Wells Fargo, for example, it's just not a fit for their business model, that doesn't mean that an A and B bank or First Interstate Bank is going to deny you as well. So, there's different business models for different banks. They're looking for different types of business clients. And so you may just not be a fit for that particular bank, but it doesn't mean that your search is over. So I always encourage people to try to find alignment between what their business is and what the bank's business model is for lending to small businesses, and look for that fit. So you want to understand that banks are risk adverse. And so they're going to often steer you initially, if you're a straight startup business and you have no revenues in your company, they're typically going to steer you towards a home equity line of credit if you're a homeowner, or they're going to ask you for a personal guarantee or collateral to secure that business loan. And so they're not wrong for doing that, right? They're in the business of earning interest income and getting their money back. So it's important that you understand what you're agreeing to before you sign anything. So again, if you need help kind of navigating that lending environment, we're here at the Women's Business Center to answer questions and help you be prepared when you go in and meet with a banker. Now, if a traditional bank does deny your request and you've kind of run out of options in the traditional banking realm in Wyoming, then there might be some lending opportunities for you through the Wyoming Women's Business Center, and that's our microloan program. But again, all lenders, us, and all banks, they're all going to require a business plan, and that's where we typically start with our clients, is really trying to refine your business plan so that we can take you through the microloan qualification process. All right, so to get a little bit more expansive on bank loans and options through the SBA, I am going to turn this over to Steve. And as I do that, I want everybody to notice the handouts section on the Go To Control panel. There's a little handouts drop down. If you will drop that down, you'll see that there are 2 individual PDF files in there that you can save to your desktop. And so I encourage you to do that, because Steve is going to be sharing these documents with you, and they might be a little small on the screen. And so it'll be easier if you download them and have them going forward. So Steve, I just made you the presenter. If you want to
very good.
pop your screen up as people are downloading. And Steve's got a lot of different SBA options to go over. Some of them are specific to Wyoming, is that right?
No, they're not specific to Wyoming. They're the same programs throughout the country. So
maybe it was the grants.
Okay,
We're going to talk about that in a minute, right?
The grant, the one grant, the STEP grant is specific to Wyoming. Yes.
Okay.
So can you see my screen, Christine?
I can. It looks great.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you, Christine, and for inviting me to be part of this presentation today. First thing I want to mention is that SBA does not. The only time SBA loans money out directly is through our Office of Disaster Assistance. So those would be loans for flooding, drought, fires, or economic disaster loans like we have currently right now with the Payroll Protection Program, the EIDL loans, which are loans that you can get through the federal government. And those are loans that are the only time that SBA loans money out directly. Ordinarily, we wouldn't do that. So you're probably wondering, well, then why am I here today? So the reason I'm here today is to talk to you a little bit about the SBA programs, and it's good information for you to know when you go into the bank to try and secure a loan. So when you go into the bank, basically there's three things that could happen. You can go into the bank and they could say, yes, we're going to give you the loan. We're going to do it straight out, and we're not going to do it with a SBA guarantee. They wouldn't tell you that. They would just not do that. They can also say, yes, we'll do the loan. You're kind of right on the edge for our lending standards. But if we can get an SBA guarantee on this loan, we're going to do that. So what that means is they can come to SBA and they can ask us to put a guarantee on that loan. Just in case for some reason your business does not make it, SBA would at that point, at the request of the lender, to come in and pay off a balanced out loan. The percentage of loan that we would be paying off ordinarily would be anywhere from 50 to 85%, or up to 90% in some cases, just depending on the loan amount and the program you use. So it is good information for you to have. If you go into the bank and they deny you the loan, say, we're not going to do it, certainly bring up, well, what about if you were to get an SBA guarantee on it? So it's good for you to know what that means. So currently right now on the chart that I'm showing is the ones that are highlighted in yellow is changes from our ordinary loan programs. So highlighting the yellow is because we've received funds through Congress or the Coronavirus Act or the CARES Act to enhance these ordinary 7A programs through SBA. So that's what those are. But also please keep in mind that these will be changing as of October 1st. And then the other chart that I'm not showing, those will also likely change. Some of the terms will change October 1st, which is beginning of the fiscal year. So let's just go over a few of these programs. We'll make it quick. For instance, the first one is the 7A loan program. That's where the vast majority of our loans are made in that program. Right now, with the funding from the CARES Act, through September 30th, the bankers will receive a 90% guarantee on that loan that they make to you. Okay. Ordinarily, and you can use it for a whole vast variety of use of proceeds for expansion, renovation, new companies, purchase of land, equipment, working capital, all kinds of things. The biggest change is we do not regulate the interest rates. We don't tell the banks what to charge. We just set a maximum interest rate of what they can charge. So there's some protection that way as well. Maturities can go up to 25 years with real estate. The biggest thing right now that's going on ordinarily without the funding from the government, you would pay, there's an upfront guarantee fee of anywhere from 2% to 3.75% of the loan guaranteed portion that is passed on. It doesn't have to be passed on, but almost 100% of the time it's passed on to the borrower. Right now through September 30th, those fees are waived. So there wouldn't be any upfront guarantee fees. Also, there is a 0.55 basis point percent, so just over 0.5% annual fee that is paid to the lender. That does be paid, that is paid by the borrower. That cannot be passed on. That cannot, that is passed on to, I'm sorry, that is, the bank pays that. That cannot be passed on. But for right now, that fee is waived. So that also saves the bank money. So if you're looking and it's possible that you could get your business started up between now and September 30th, this would be a good time to do it because there's extra incentives for the lenders and extra security for the lenders to do this. And you can go up to $5 million on that 7A loan. The second one is what we call the small loans, and that's basically up to $350,000 right now. Everything's the same, except it's an easier process for the lender. There's less qualifications that the borrower has to meet, and it's in less paperwork. So it's just another program that makes it easier for the lender. The one below that is the SBA Express. And right now, that's the limit on that is $1 million through September 30th of this year. That is after September 30th, it goes down to $500,000, and it's right now loans of $350,000 or less are 75% guaranteed for the banks. After that, it reverts back to 50%. Now, what the SBA Express is, the lender can also they do all the paperwork, they do all the qualifications, they do everything. SBA does not look at approving it or not approving it. They just notify SBA that they've made that loan. The lender has to have special authority to be able to do these loans. There's criteria they have to meet to be an SBA Express lender, but they make all the decisions. SBA does not make the decisions on that. The line below that is cap lines, which is just working capital lines of credit. So you can need working capital, you can get contract cap lines for credit and seasonal and builders. It's just credit lines is all that is. The last one on this page is the Community Advantage. These are to make loans, and these are made through a Community Advantage lender. The Community Advantage lender in Wyoming is WWBC Frontier. They're out of Casper, Wyoming. These are mission-focused lenders that make loans in socially or economically distressed areas or socioeconomically depressed or serviced individuals. These loans can go up to $250,000. A little bit higher interest you're probably going to pay, but if that's your only option, it's probably the way to go. Going to the second page. Okay, we also have the international trade loan. These are up for $5 million. These are 90% guaranteed by the Small Business Administration. So if you're doing any exporting in the business or planning on doing exporting for your business, this is a loan that would be available. And then the Export Working Capital Program, that's just the same as the export, the working capital lines of credit, and for the SBA, except it's for exporting purposes, and it's a higher guarantee. Export Express is basically the same again as the SBA Express, except again a higher percent guarantee. We have also what's called the 504 loans, and those are loans that are done through a certified development company. The certified development company located in Wyoming, again, is WWBC Frontier in Cheyenne. How that works is WWBC Frontier, the certified development company, would take 40% of the risk, the lender would take 50% of the risk, and the borrower would have a minimum of 10% equity position. The nice thing about this right now is the portion, that 40% that the certified development company is responsible for or doing the backing up, their interest rates right now are give or take around 3%, depending on the term. So it's very, very good interest rates on those. The 504 refinancing program is the same as the 504, except it's for refinancing purposes. The last one is the microloan program that Christy mentioned. This is through the Women's Business Center. Loans can be up to $50,000 with a maturity of up to 6 years. A little bit higher interest rate, but again, it's a good place to get started. You can refinance that later on if you can get more favorable terms once you're more established, and there's no penalty to do that. So that's probably where most of you are going to start. So a couple things to be aware of is that when you go into a bank, they're going to require probably a minimum of 10% equity injection, equity position in your company. And SBA standards are for startups that we require a minimum of 10% equity. And that's, the banks, again, are probably going to require more than that. And as Christy mentioned, some banks are more favorable to startups than others. Some of the larger banks, a lot of them, you have to be in business for 2 years or more before they're going to give you a loan. I would start with the bank that you have a working relationship with, and start with them and see what they can do. That's where I would go. But don't get discouraged if they say, you know, no, we can't do the loan. Mention to them about the SBA Guarantee Program. I mean, like I say, there's a lot of advantages right now for the lenders to get those SBA guarantees. It lowers their risk by quite a bit. So,
Absolutely.
the last thing I wanted to mention, that is not on my screen here is with the CARES funding that's coming out. What program that's coming out here very shortly? It's called the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, and that's specifically for restaurants or food trucks, vendors, those types of businesses. If there's for restaurants that are in hotels or bars, things like that, there is some parameters, some eligibility requirements that they have to meet, but those are grants. Those are not loans. Those are grants that are available. And if you go to SBA.gov, and at the very top, you'll see a yellow banner for coronavirus funding relief. Click on that, and that will bring you up and show you all the programs that are available right now through the Small Business Administration for coronavirus funding or COVID funding. It'll talk about grants, it'll talk about loans, the whole works. The last thing I wanted to mention real quickly, and I know we're running a little bit late, is there's a STEP program that is specifically for exporting, and that is administered through the Wyoming Business Council. That's one that Christy was talking about. This one is specific for Wyoming, but they have money available to them that's been provided by the SBA to help you out with website design, to help you out with marketing. If you want to go to a trade show in a foreign country, they can help you out with those costs as well, and those are grants. There is limits to the dollar amount, but you know, it's a great way to go if you're looking at doing some exporting. And if you have any questions on that, you could certainly reach out to me. My email address is Steven, STEVEN, .Immel, I, M as in Mary, M as in Mary, E as in Edward, L as in Larry, at SBA.gov. So, and you know, if you forget that, don't worry, get a hold of Christine. She knows how to get a hold of me. And I'll open it up for, you know, actually I'm going to swing it back to Christine.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christine. I know I went through it quickly, so if anybody has any questions, just feel free to reach out to me.
No, I feel like the punchline there, Steve, is there's never been a better time to start a business. Lending is very much available and backed by the United States federal government right now in a way that we haven't seen in a long time. And so
yeah, it's absolutely, it's been years since we've seen any of these types of programs.
Yeah. It's feasible, and it's exciting with a lot of the COVID relief grants and programs that have been released. If you couple those with some of the bank loans, we have definitely seen some small businesses actually thrive through COVID-19 instead of being hurt. Obviously, that's industry specific. If you were in tourism, you know, or food service, I understand it's been, you know, incredibly difficult, and no amount of extra funding, you know, has kind of dug you out of that hole that was created by the global pandemic. But other industries have really flourished. And so we would be remiss if we also didn't mention some of the other kind of bonus funding opportunities that are out there in Wyoming right now. There are several incubator and accelerator programs across the state: Impact 307, Silicon Couleur, and Jackson. You know, there's different economic development agencies out there, chambers that are running different programs, and some of them involve startup competitions, which offer prize money. And that can always be helpful in starting your business. Again, none of these things are going to fund your business startup at 100%. But these kinds of dollars can be impactful and influential in getting you going or helping you with your expansion. So reach out to the economic developers in your local community, reach out to the chamber, reach out to the Wyoming Business Council regional, you know, directors, reach out to the Wyoming Women's Business Center, you know, call SBA. You know, when you are on the hunt to look for funding for your business, don't expect it to drop in your lap, right? It's a process. It's a job. Looking for funding is a job, just like your business is a job. And so you have to prioritize it in order to be successful at it. Okay, so we have run a little bit over time, but I do want to just leave a couple minutes here for questions. So I'll let people type in questions if they have any. And while I let you do that, I'm just going to wrap up with some closing slides really quick, and I'll keep an eye on that questions panel. The Women's Business Center is made possible through lots of partnership agencies, but our primary one, of course, is the Small Business Administration. And so Steve and all the people at the SBA help make our program possible, along with a matching grant from the Wyoming Business Council. And so we're super thankful for all of their support. This is contact information, both for one-on-one counseling at the Women's Business Center, as well as our specialty COVID-19 program. Excuse me. So if you have an interest in either one of those, the contact information is on the screen. And let me just take a quick look here at the question. Okay, one question is, why haven't you mentioned the SBA 2020 disaster loans directly to SBA? So Steve, do you want to talk about the disaster loans that were given out this past year?
Sure. There's the ones that were, some of those that were offered in 2020 did not roll over to the current 2021. In the past, there was an economic injury disaster loan, an EIDL loan advance. That was a grant that was up to $1,000 per employee, up to $10,000. That grant is not currently available. That they did not make that part of the funding for this round. The other one is the economic injury disaster loan, and that one is available. That is a straight loan that any business can apply for. You apply through SBA.gov online for that loan. Those loans are currently up to $150,000. The interest rate on those is 3.75% for a profit business and 2.75% for a nonprofit business. And you get maturities up to 30 years on those loans. Those loans are available right now, but the EIDL loan advance, which was a grant, is currently not available.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for clarifying that. So if anybody's interested in our upcoming webinars, you can go to our website, click the training tab, and look at our upcoming events. We do have, I think, between 3 and 5 webinars already scheduled for May, and we'll be loading those up here on our website in the next week. And so I want to thank everybody attending today, and thanks for letting us go a little over time. This was really valuable information, and thank you to my partner, Steve. Good job, Steve.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So please complete our survey at the close of this webinar. Thanks again for attending, and everybody have a great week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Christine.